Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Om Shri Mahaganapataye Namaha Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Padyantam Vande Guru Paramparam Asmad Gurubhyo Namaha Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badharayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishwaro Guru Ratmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murteye Namaha Om Shri Medha Dakshina Murti Swamine Namaha Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastuma Vidvishavahai Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Namaste once again, everyone.
Namaste, Guruji. Pranam. Namaste.
Manomayo napi bhavet paratma yadhyantavatvat parinami bhavat dukkhatmakatvat vishayatva hetoho drashta hi drishyatmakaya na drishtaha. So we are discussing the 51st shloka in our list. And here the Acharya is pointing out that Manomaya Kosha can never be the Paramatma because Manomaya Kosha has got a beginning and an end, is subject to changes, has sorrow as its very nature, and is an object of perception. So the subject, the seer, the awarer, is never seen to be in the form of an object, the seen. So he says, Manomaya api paratma na bhaved. Na bhaved. Not only Annamaya and Pranamaya, but even Manomaya also cannot be Paramatma, the innermost self, which is the consciousness principle. And he presents his case by highlighting the contradictory features between Manomaya Kosha and Atma. The first reason he gives is Adyantavatvad. Manomaya or the mind also is subject to birth and death. Whereas, as we have seen, Atma is eternal, it has no birth and death. It is Anadi and Ananta. Therefore, owing to the opposite nature, Manomaya cannot be Atma. Adyantavatvat manaha Atma na bhavati. That is the first conclusion. Then the next feature of Manomaya is what? Parinami bhavat. We have to add, you must remember, Parinami bhavat Atmana bhavati. That Atmana bhavati we have to add for every reason. Parinama means change. So Parinami bhavat means the mind is subject to change. We all experience that sometimes violent emotional changes happen in the mind. So Parinami means subject to modification, subject to change, whereas Atma is nirvikaraha, changeless consciousness. Therefore, the changeless consciousness and the ever-changing mind can never be one and the same. Manaha parinami bhavat Atma na bhavati. Second reason. Now there's some people, they raise the interesting point, something we have to probably look into a little deeper. And in fact, it's a good idea for meditation also. They say that even the entire creation, its manifestation, and also does not involve any transformation, isn't it? Like the light is manifest on the hand, and when I remove the hand, light is still there, only it is not manifest. And when I insert the hand, the unmanifest light becomes manifest. So this manifestation of light is not a modification that is happening in the light. So similarly, when we say the consciousness is manifesting into the world, into the creation, the consciousness doesn't modify into manifest consciousness. Manifestation also is a seeming change only, not a real modification. Because this is something which, the opponents of Advaita Vedanta who disagree with that, they say that even consciousness does undergo a change when it becomes from unmanifest to manifest. So we have to understand consciousness doesn't have parinami bhava, whereas the mind has. The next one is dukkhatmakatvat. The mind, if you observe, is predominantly dissatisfied. The nature of the mind is dukkham only. Dukkhatmakam means what? Full of complaints. So what is moksha? Long back, I have read one book called I Am Okay, You Are Okay. One of the early days of management, Some of you must have read, it's a book based on transactional analysis, which says everything is okay. And that is moksha, which contrasts with an ajnani's mental condition who says nothing is okay. Therefore, the mind is ever discontented, dissatisfied. So for ajnani, the mind is an embodiment of dissatisfaction, dukkham. It is his very nature. So dukkhatmakam or dukkha swarupam manaha. But then you will ask, how can you say that? That mind is of the nature of sorrow. Mind does become happy on and off. It is not that you're always in a sorrowful state. Therefore, it is dukkhatmakam and sukhatmakam also. Vedanta disagrees. According to Vedanta, whenever mind is happy, it is not because there is happiness in the mind. Mind is happy because of Atma, which is the only source of happiness in the entire creation. Atma alone is Sukha Swarupam. And that Atma Sukham is reflected in the mind. When the mind, of course, is temporarily in a conducive situation. There is a Purnatvam. That Purnatvam, which is Atma Ananda, reflects in the mind as temporarily as happiness. Therefore, mind is not happy, or mind is happy not because that is its nature, because it temporarily reflects Atma Sukham. We saw the example in the last class, isn't it? Last or previous class. Moonlight. We all say moonlight. But we know also that the moonlight is not the moon's light. It is the light of the sun on the moon. Moon itself does not have any light. That example, you must bring it to your mind. So the mind is always dukkhatmakam. Essential nature is dukkham, according to Vedanta. In fact, all anatmas, a mind also is an anatma, right? They are defined as anrita jada dukkham. Anatma is intrinsically mithya. Anatma is intrinsically inert. Anatma is intrinsically dukkham, pain. Whereas Atma is what? Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Anandam, Satchidananda. So the three features of Anatma are Anritam, Jadam, Dukkham. And opposite of Anritam, in the case of Atma, is Sat. Opposite of Jadam is Chit. Opposite of Dukkham is Anandaha. Therefore, how can we equate Anrita Jada Dukkha Manomaya and Satchidananda Atma? Therefore, he says, Dukkhatmakatvat na Paratma. Mind, Manomaya Kosha cannot be Atma. Then the next reason he gave, Vishayatva Hetoho. And this is one of the most powerful arguments. Manomaya is also an intimate object of experience. I experience every emotion. Others don't experience my emotions, but for me, my mental conditions are very clear. All my knowledge, all my ignorance also I am aware of. So both knowledge and ignorance I know. Somebody asks, do you know this? I either say I know or I do not know. So not knowing is also a knowledge. Thus all mental conditions are known to me, knowing without undergoing any change. And I am that knowing consciousness, the Chit. Mind, of course, is a known entity. Therefore, knowing entity has to be different from the knower subject. Seen and seer cannot be same. Known and knower and known cannot be same. So mind has to be different from Atma. So Vishayatva Hetoho. Here Vishayatvam means Drishyatvam. Sakshi Pratyaksham. So the mind is known by me. And not only that, during the sleep, mind resolves. That resolved condition of the mind is also known to me. I say, oh, I had a very wonderful sleep. No thoughts were there. My mind was at rest, peaceful. Therefore, Drishyatvat, mind is Anatma only. So, we must, whenever we are trying to say something is Atma or Anatma and analyzing it, these 5 features of Anatma, which we have earlier discussed, we must always remember. What are they? Drishyatvam, Bhautikatvam, Sagunatvam, Savikaratvam, and Agama Payitvam. These are the 5 features. Anything which these 5 features fit into is a Anatma. So, Vishayatva Hetoho. Then the last one he explains, Drashta hi drishyatmataya na drishtaha. Again, a very simple argument. We have already seen it. Mind is experienced by me, but Atma can never experience as at any particular time as an object. And that is why there is nothing called Atma Anubhava as an event. Many people think that Vedanta is about, like physics, chemistry and all. First you learn the theory, and then you practice Vedanta. Practicals are there. And what are the practicals? You experiment with all these things and then you get the experience of Atma. So many people are looking for Atma Anubhava as a culmination. In fact, they say moksha is nothing but Atma Anubhava, experience of the Atma. But we must remember, Atma will never become an object of experience. Because if I going to experience Atma, it will become an object of experience, isn't it? Whenever we say I'm experiencing something, that something is the object of our experience. And if it is an object, it becomes anatma. So in order to, if Atma becomes anatma, then we will require another higher Atma to experience that. And this will be, this will go on and on and on. So therefore, Atma Anubhava should not be taken as experience of Atma. If at all there is such a word, Atma Anubhava, used anywhere in the Shastra, we should translate it as Atma Aparoksha Jnanam. The knowledge of my intimate self. The knowledge of my real self. Aparoksha Jnanam. Claiming that I am the Atma without experiencing it as varieties of emotions, without experiencing it as an object. The kind of experience, emotional experiences that we have with Anatma, any type of Anatma, we can never have with Atma at any particular time. And that is why, if we say, I want to experience Atma, the experience of Atma is in and through the experience of every Anatma. Because you get the experience because of the consciousness pervading that Anatma, pervading that event of experience. So we can intellectually understand that behind every Anatma there is Atma. When we actually experience Anatma, any Anatma for that matter, we are actually experiencing the Atma only. If we want to understand Atma Anubhava, we can understand like this. But there is no separate Atma Anubhava we can get. Because Atma is not an object. And that is what Shankaracharya wants to convey here. He says, Drashta hi drishyatmataya na drishtaha. Drashta here means the seer, the Atma, the experiencer. So here, the experiencer, drashta, na drishtaha, is never experienced at a particular time. Drishyatmataya means as an object. Drishya Atma means Drishya Rupena Atma, in the form of an object. Atma is never experienced. Whereas the mind is ever experienced by me. Always I am aware of my mind, what it is doing. Therefore, how can the ever experienced mind and the never experienced Atma be one and the same? Drashta hi. Drashta hi means, as it is well known, the seer is never seen as an object. That is how we have to translate. In fact, this idea is expounded in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Yeneda sarvam vijanati tam kena vijaniyat Vignataramare kena vijaniyat iti. The one who is the knower can never be the known. Therefore, Manomaya is a kosha. In fact, this word kosha is a very loaded word. You must understand that. Whenever I claim I am disturbed, we must use this word kosha as the clue. That kosha word should become a code word for me. Whenever I am agitated, disturbed, worried, if I tell myself, oh, it's all kosha hai, it is not me. If we tell ourselves, we will be able to distance ourselves from that anatma. And that will give us objectivity. And once you start looking everything with objectivity, mind automatically calms down. The agitation in the mind gets reduced. And we have seen this example earlier. So, for example, the neighbor's problem. Whenever our neighbor has got a problem and he comes and tells, I've got a problem, we all become very creative, isn't it? Because we can see the neighbor's problem with objectivity. We will offer 100 solutions to him. Why? Because it is neighbor's problem. So here what we are experiencing, Sakshi Bhava. You are not involved in it. You are just witnessing and then giving advice. But when it comes to my own problem, I have no solution because I have become one with the problem. And therefore, we should have certain trigger words which should become clue for us during disturbing moments. And one such clue is kosha hai. Another clue is sakshi bhava hai. The moment I use that word, I should be able to calm down. Oh, it's not my problem. It is the problem of manomaya kosha. It is the problem of vijnanamaya kosha. It's not my problem. The moment you bring the word kosha, mind should calm down. And if that happens, that means Vedanta is working. Otherwise, what is the use of studying, spending time and all? We must monitor our progress when we are going through Vedanta and the spiritual learning rather. Anyway, therefore mind is not me, it is a kosha. So after dealing with manomaya kosha and dismissing the possibility that it is Atma, now the Acharya turns his attention to Vijnanamaya kosha. We will read the sloka. Buddhir buddhindriyaihi sardam savrittik kartrilakshana Vijnanamaya kosha syat pumsa samsara karanam. The Anvaya of the sloka is buddhihi buddhindriyaihi sardam savrittihi kartrilakshana Vijnanamaya kosha Pumsaha samsara karanam syat. Buddhihi, the buddhi, the intellect. Buddhindriyaihi sardam, along with the sense organs. Buddhindriyaihi, sense organs. Savrittihi, with the thought modifications. Kartrilakshana, characterized by action as a doer. Vijnanamaya kosha is the Vijnanamaya kosha. Pumsa for the person. Samsara karanam, the cause of samsara. Syat would be or is. So the buddhi, the intellect with its thought modifications and organs of perception, is the Vijnanamaya Kosha, which is of the nature of the doer, and it is the cause of samsara for the person. So with the previous sloka, Manomaya is over. So remember, we studied 2 slokas for Manomaya. Whereas if you see the original, Adi Shankara deals with Manomaya, he gives 17 verses. Of course, Swami Paramarthananda ji has selected 2 of them to convey the main idea. Similarly, Vijnanamaya also, Swamiji has selected 5 verses for us, whereas Shankaracharya in his original work has given 22 verses. And I am giving you all this information because some of you, if you are interested in studying the original text, you can know what is coming rather. Original text, of course, very detailed deals with it. Adi Shankara answers many questions that could come in our mind through these verses. So we are entering the 5 verses of Vijnanamaya. Buddhihi buddhindriyahi sardham. As I said, buddhihi means the intellect with the free will. With the willpower, the intellect is the one which takes decisions. So which thought I should entertain, which thought I should remember, which thought I should reject, where I should entertain ahamvritti, where I should entertain manovritti. Because I use vritti or thoughts or manomaya as an instrument. And that I, who is the user, which is called karta, is the buddhihi, with the free will. And buddhindriyahi means with the sense organs of knowledge, jnanendriyahi. Because I must also decide which sense organs to use. When we see a beautiful rose flower, which is the faculty which decides whether it should be seen or not? Jnanendriya will bring the object or image of that object into our mind. A thought will be created. But what can mind do? Mind will pass on that information to the intellect. For intellect to decide whether it should see that object or not. And if it is going to see that, if he wants to see that object, it should use a selector, which is the eyes, the sight faculty. All these decisions. The intellect cannot select ears for seeing a rose. Therefore, the intellect also decides which sense organ must be used. Therefore, the decider I, the self-willed I, here is called buddhihi. So here 6 factors it talks about in Vijnanamaya Kosha. 1 intellect with free will plus 5 sense organ. Sardham means along with, joined together. Savrittihi kartrilakshanaha bhavati or syat. Savrittihi means with varieties of vritti, varieties of thoughts available as an instrument of transaction, which we have seen is manomaya. So savritti means along with varieties of thoughts broadly divided into aham vritti and idam vritti. The I thought and this thought. So when I ask about you, who are you, etc., what is your age? The answer is I am so and so and so, I am born to such and such parents, I am born in such and such place, etc. So I deliberately invoke aham vritti, the thought of I. And other times I invoke idam vritti, like when I am listening to the talk. So I have got varieties of vritti at my disposal for transaction. That is savrittihi. Kartri lakshana means this is called karta. We have seen earlier, manomaya is the karana atma. Vijnanamaya is the karta atma. So kartri lakshana, this Vijnanamaya is the leader of the group. So kartri lakshana Vijnanamaya kosha syat. And this karta is called Vijnanamaya, which is Atma, the self for ignorant people, but which in reality is a kosha, as revealed by the Shastram and as considered by the Jnanis. So Vijnanamaya kosha syat pumsah samsara karanam. And this karta atma, who becomes the bhokta atma, and who also becomes the jnata atma. Jnata means the knower, karta, doer, bhokta, enjoyer, jnata, knower. So the triputi, doer, experiencer, enjoyer. In fact, the adjunct ta, jnata, bhokta, karta, the ta which is there, in English, if you translate, it becomes er. Karta, bhokta, jnata, doer, enjoyer, knower. So the doer, the subject I, is pumsaha samsara karanam. This I is called ahankara, karta, bhokta, jnata, jiva. And that karta, bhokta, jnata status which we give ourselves is the reason, cause for samsara. This is the kingpin, mafia leader as it were, because it is at the root of all trouble. Why? As a karta, I produce sanchita, agami and prarabdha karmas, punya papas. So like a silkworm weaving the silk around itself, I end up in a cauldron of boiling hot water. We weave the sanchita, agami, prarabdha karmas and fall into the hot water called samsara. Therefore, ahankara has to be understood properly as Vijnanamaya kosha according to the Shastra. But what does we do? What do we do as Ajnani? This Vijnanamaya kosha, this ahankara, is mistaken as the very self. So this Vijnanamaya, the karta, bhokta, pramata or jnata, ahankara, jiva is pumsa samsara karanam, is the cause of samsara for the human being. Pumsaha here means living being for an individual. So this is what he explains in this sloka. And we get more details regarding Vijnanamaya in the following verses. Let us read the verse number 53. 1 second, excuse me. Anuvrajachit pratibimba shaktihi विज्ञान संख्या प्रकृतेर्विकारः ज्ञान क्रियावान अहमित्यजस्रम देहेन्द्रियादिषु अभिमन्यते वृषम. So the Anvaya of the sloka is Vijnana Sankhya Anuvrajat Chit Pratibimba Shakti Prakritehe Vikaraha Jnana Kriyavan Ajasram Dehendriyadishu Brisham Aham Iti Abhimanyate. Vijnana Sankhya, the kosha known as Vijnana, Anuvrajat Chit Pratibimba Shakti is the power of reflected consciousness that has entered into it. Anuvrajat. Prakritehe, of Prakriti, of all Anatma. Vikaraha, modified form. Jnana Kriyavan has the knowledge and action. Ajasram, always. Dehendriyadishu, in the body and sense organs, etc. Brisham, totally. Ahamiti, as I. Abhimanyate, identifies. So this kosha known as Vijnana, Vijnanamaya, has the power of illumining due to the reflected consciousness which has entered it. In a modified form of Prakriti, having the function of knowledge and action, and always identifies totally with the body, sense organs, etc. as I. So we must understand, as we've seen in the previous talk, ego, what we call ahankara, sits in this Vijnanamaya kosha. So this Vijnanamaya is the intellectual sheath or cover, is Prakrite Vikaraha, is also a product of Prakriti. We have seen Prakriti is another name for Maya. We have discussed that in very great detail when we discussed the Karana Sharira. If you remember, we used 4 words: Avyaktam, Shaktihi, Avidya and Maya. And Prakriti is also added now. Prakriti also in the Shastra is called Moola Prakriti or Moola Vidya. They are all synonyms rather. So Prakritehe Vikaraha, from the Prakriti or Maya alone, everything has evolved, including Vijnanamaya. Of course, not directly, but through the intermediary stage of first 5 subtle elements were formed, and then from the 5 subtle elements, the gross elements are formed. So from Maya or Prakriti, Sukshma Bhutani, the 5 subtle elements are evolved. And from those 5 subtle elements alone, Sukshma Shariram evolves. And we have seen Sukshma Shariram comprises of Pranamaya, Manomaya and Vijnanamaya. Anandamaya, Karana Shariram. Stula Shariram is Annamaya. So, as we have seen in the evolution of Pranamaya, Rajoguna of the 5 subtle elements plays an important, prominent role. In the evolution of Manomaya and Vijnanamaya, Sattva Guna plays an important role. All this we have seen in Tattva Bodha. Those students Sattva Bodha were there. They should be able to recall all these things. Therefore, the Samashti Sattva Guna is responsible for the mind and intellect. Vyashti Sattva Guna or individual elements is responsible for Jnanendriyani, the sense organs of knowledge. I would suggest that you please revisit the Tattva Bodha talks and have a good understanding of all these. The chart also which I had given, from which guna, which element, what organs are formed. Shankaracharya also doesn't go deep into it here. And therefore, There's no point in elaborating too much here. So even though the mind-intellect complex is supposed to be born out of sattva guna of the 5 elements, we should always note whenever we are talking about something born of a particular guna, that does not actually exclude the other gunas, rajo guna and tamo guna. All that when we say is it is sattva guna, the mind intellect complex is born out of sattva guna. What we mean is that predominantly sattva guna they are born of. And the rajo guna and tamasic tendencies are also there to a lesser degree. And Bhagavan deals with this in the Bhagavad Gita, where certain thoughts are considered as rajasic. He says in the 14th chapter, Krishna says, Lobha pravrittira rambha karmanamashamaspruha rajasyetani jayante vivrude bharatarshava. So, hey Arjuna, when rajoguna is slightly more, then greed, etc. happens. Then people will ask, oh, you said that the mind is from sattva guna. How can rajasic vritti be in the mind? When the mind itself is made up of the sattva guna of 5 elements. It's a relevant question. Where these questions should come in our mind whenever we are studying. And that's why I said mind is predominantly sattvic, but rajasic and tamasic vrittis are possible. Because there are traces of rajas and tamas along with predominance of sattva guna in the mind. We need to remember this point. So Vijnanamaya is a product of samashti sattva guna of the 5 subtle elements, which themselves are products of Prakriti. Therefore, Prakritehe vikaraha. But Atma is not a product. Therefore, Vijnanamaya and Atma cannot be equated. So, I am the Atma, which is not a product, whereas Ahankara, Sukshma Shariram, Vijnanamaya, etc. are all products. Prakrite Vikaraha. In fact, this word Prakrite Vikaraha can be understood in 2 ways. One is modification and another is meaning of a product. Vikaraha means modification. Vikara also can mean a product. Here we take the meaning of a product. Because Vijnana Sankhya, it is said, Vijnana Maya, the very usage of word Maya, it's a Mayat Pratyaya, indicates that it is a product. Then Anuvrajat Chit Pratibimba Shakti. Vijnanamaya has the capacity to reflect or borrow consciousness from Karana Shariram. So it borrows Chit Pratibimba. Chit Pratibimba, Chidabhasa, we saw in the previous class. Chidabhasa, reflected consciousness. Like the moonlight is reflected sunlight. The Chaitanyam of Atma is original. Karana Shariram's Chaitanyam is borrowed from the original Chaitanyam. And then similarly, Sukshma Shariram's Chaitanyam, Vijnanamaya Kosha's Chaitanyam, etc. are all borrowed. And therefore, Anuvrajat Chit Pratibimba Shakti. Anuvraja means follows, flows into Anugachati. So wherever Vijnanamaya goes, Chidabhasa also follows. And thereafter, after death, when Vijnanamaya travels as a part of the Sukshma Sharira, the borrowed consciousness also travels because Atma is all pervading, it is everywhere to lend consciousness to any action that is taking place. Atma itself does not travel, that we know. So whenever Vijnanamaya goes, it can tap the reflection of all pervading Atma. It's like an ATM. Swami Paramarthananda ji compares it to an ATM. The Atma ATM, he says, is available everywhere. So Vijnanamaya can borrow its pratibimba. And because of that, Vijnanamaya becomes sentient. It becomes a knower. It becomes a decider. By itself, Vijnanamaya is inert. It is not a knower. But with borrowed Chidabhasa, Vijnanamaya is capable of knowing the external world. Of course, using the body, mind, sense complex. Directly, the Buddhi cannot interact. So it is just like that moonlight, borrowed moonlight. In fact, on full moon day, the moonlight is so bright that it can illumine the whole earth. But we must remember always, moonlight is borrowed light, borrowed from the sun. Similarly, Atma lends consciousness to Vijnanamaya, and Vijnanamaya illumines the whole world. When I say Pramata or knower, it is nothing but the intellect with borrowed consciousness. So he says, Prakrite Vikara Anuvrajat Chit Pratibimba Shakti. Shakti here means the power of illumination, revealing power. As we have seen earlier, a wall cannot illumine any object because wall does not borrow consciousness from Atma. Even though Atma pervades the wall does not have the capacity to borrow. Therefore, the wall remains insentient. The desk remains insentient. Laptop remains insentient. But my finger, my hands, they are all sentient because they are able to borrow consciousness. In fact, Swami Vidyaranya, in a very beautiful text called Panchadashi, he says, every inert object has only one consciousness, which is the original consciousness. Understand it very carefully. Because consciousness pervades every object, every inert object is also pervaded by consciousness. Which consciousness? The original consciousness. Whereas every sentient living being has got two types of consciousnesses. One is the original consciousness, which is all pervading, and second is the reflected consciousness. So original consciousness plus reflected consciousness is equal to a sentient being. It is the original consciousness alone which makes a being or a thing sentient or insentient. Insentient, natural state. The objects do not have the capacity to borrow consciousness. Those objects, those inert objects which have got the capacity to borrow consciousness from the original consciousness, they alone become sentient. And what is that? That is the Shakti, power of illumination. So Vijnanamaya becomes Pramata, Jnata, a knower, etc. because of the borrowed consciousness, that Shakti. And therefore it becomes Jnana Kriyavan. It becomes the knower of varieties of things in the world. Jnanavan bhavati. Ghata vritti dwara ghata jnanavan bhavati. Pata vritti dwara pata jnanavan bhavati. through various vrittis or thoughts. Vijnanamaya kosha becomes the knower of varieties of things. And through pranamaya, that is by employing pranamaya also, this jnata, the Vijnanamaya, becomes kriyavan. Why he has to use pranamaya? Because the karmendriyani, as we have seen earlier when we discussed pranamaya, are forming part of pranamaya. It is pranamaya which powers the karmendriyani. The first five organs of action, hands, legs, etc., to do things. So, Vijnanamaya, the knower, using pranamaya, becomes kriyavan, a doer. By using the speech, now I have become a speaker. So the speech is what, from where I'm able to do it, is pranamaya kosha is what is giving me the action of speech. And manomaya generates thoughts, and which become knowledge by in vijnanamaya. So see the connections, we have to make all these connections. So jnana kriyavan kriyavan cha bhavati, becomes a knower. Okay. After becoming a knower, what does Vijnanamaya do? Aham iti ajasram. The Vijnanamaya uses the word I. And it is not confined to the buddhi alone. It extends to manomaya. It identifies with manomaya, which is an instrument. It extends to pranamaya. It identifies with pranamaya, which is also an instrument. That's why I say I am speaking. That identification is so strong. It identifies with Annamaya also. It is this Vijnanamaya, the knower, the Jnata alone, which identifies with other koshas. And therefore he says, Dehendriyadishu. In the Annamaya kosha, Indriyams or sense organs, etc. Here, etc., we can include Manomaya, etc. Pranamaya, Manomaya, etc. What is that? Abhimanyate brisham. Abhimanyate means identifies with. Brisham means intensely, passionately. Our attachment and love for our body is so intense that we constantly pamper the body. All beauty parlors are thriving only because of that, because of our attachment to the body. So here brisham means passionately. It's an adverb for abhimanyate. Passionately identifies. Ajasram means continuously, constantly. As what? As aham iti, as I am. When the body is 60 years old, we never say my body is 60 years old. We say I am 60 years old. I am going to celebrate. I'm not saying it is wrong, because in Vyavahara, we have been using it. What is important for a spiritual seeker is, whenever I say I, it should occur in my mind what I mean by that I. It is not for telling other people, but in my own mind, for my own understanding. So aham iti ajasram abhimanyate. Therefore, ahankara identifies itself with Vijnanamaya. And this ahankara extends to manomaya, pranamaya, and annamaya also. So this is one aspect, aham vritti. And outside this Annamaya, all other things and beings I identify as what? Mamakara. My spouse, my children, my sweet grandchildren, my car, my house. I am so proud of my family. There's so much pride in their achievements. All this is all wonderful. But you should make sure that it does not cause samsara. Love is good. When it causes samsara, it is called attachment. When you take care of them and you are available for them, it is called love. Making oneself available for others is love, which is wonderful. But what makes it an attachment? Worrying about them. Constantly worrying. Oh, my children are there abroad. What will be happening to them? I hear so many things. I read so many things in the newspaper. Constantly worrying. In fact, in practically whatever we call love, Vedanta says it is not love, it is attachment. Only a jnani has got real love. We, on the other hand, are mistaking our attachment for love. And that is what is the reason for all our emotional turmoil, emotional disturbances, which is what is called samsara. So, aham iti abhimanyate brisham. Now, could be a question. Here it is said this ahankara is responsible for samsara. And we have, in the verse 52, we saw the last word as samsara karanam. So the ahankara jiva is the cause of samsara, it was said. And that word, samsara karanam, is elaborated in the following verses. So the commentary on samsara karanam, how do this attachment, this ahankara lead to samsara karanam, is explained in the verses 53 to 55. And to prove that ahankara is the samsara karanam, a particular prakriya which is called anvaya vyatireka logic is used. What is that? During waking period, ahankara is there. We experience samsara. But the moment we go to sleep, ahankara goes to dormant condition. So we don't have any mental disturbances. We are blissful. We are one with Atma, free of samsara. That is the pramana. See, the extent to which Vedanta goes into analyzing the three states, waking state, dream state, and also the sushupti state. Amazing. In fact, these three states, if we understand very well, if we analyze very well, we will understand everything about Vedanta. So this samsara karanam is explained in verse 54 and 55, which we will take it together to two slokas. I think we'll have time only to read the slokas. Then we'll continue the commentary in the next class. Okay. Anadikaloya कालः अयं स्वभावः जीवः समस्तव्यवहारवोढा करोति कर्माण्यपि पूर्ववासनः पुण्यान्यपुण्याञ्च तत्फलानि भुङ्क्ते विचित्रास्वपि योनिषु व्रजन् आयाति निर्यात्यध ऊर्ध्वमेषः अस्यैव विज्ञानमयस्य जाग्रत् स्वप्ना दिवस्ताः सुख दुःख भोगः. I think this meter was not very good. Anyhow, I will next class when I repeat, I will come more prepared with the chanting of these slokas. Okay, we will stop here. Continues in the next class. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you all very much.
धन्यवाद रघुजी.
Dhanyawadaha.
Thank you, Guruji. Dhanyawadaha.
Hari Om Guruji, thank you.
Hari Om. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Guruji. Namaskaram.
Namaskaram.
Thank you, Guruji. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Hari Om. Hari Om. Thank you.
And it needs Shravanam and Rishravanam to imbibe even one shloka meaning, and before you can. Yeah, thank you very much, Guruji.
To go back also to Tattva Bodha and all.
Yeah, Tattva Bodha as well. That's what I was after.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's a very complex topic. Thank you.
Hari Om. Thank you.
Hari Om.
Hari Om, Guruji.
Hari Om.
Okay. I think there are no more questions, no other questions. So we'll stop the session today. Continue next week. Hari Om. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.